Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to another episode of my F1 22 My Team Career Mode. This is episode number 84 today for the Brazilian Grand Prix in Season 5. And you can clearly see for this one race, we have returned to the red and white of the gold leaf Team Lotus livery. After seeing much success in the JPS Lotus livery, it's time to retire that for the season, and we go to gold leaf for one last time before returning to our original livery for the last two rounds. If you guys did miss the previous one at the Mexican Grand Prix, then be sure to go check that one out before you see this one, because that was a fantastic race for us. Potentially one of the best drives we've had, and we've had a few of those this season, but we seem to keep trying to top ourselves this season with differing scenarios and strategies. And in Mexico, it was one of the biggest ones we've had yet, because we went from the back of the grid to go on to win the Mexican GP on the last lap, whilst also having to save a lot of fuel, protect the tyres with an aggressive medium to soft tyre compound strategy. It just had it all really, and we brought everything together, all those moving parts and things that needed to go right. We brought it together and we brought home a win at Mexico to make it back to back from Miami to Mexico, to make it a total of 6 wins this season, which is the most we've had in any single season on this whole game. So it's safe to say that this season things have finally clicked together, and we are on course to take our first ever Drivers' Championship. It is, you know, I don't like to say it, but we've got one hand on the trophy, and the ball is in our court now. We've just got to try and get this over the line in the remaining 3 races. But as we go into the Brazilian Grand Prix, I want to note that we are still yet to get any message about an R&D regulation change, which I'm very surprised at. There was a reason I kept mentioning it so consistently in episodes, because I really thought with no regulation change into this season, the fact that most of the cars, if not all of them, are getting to maxed out potentials, I really thought the game would have thought, you know, this is a good time now to have a regulation change. But surprisingly, we've not got one, and it's pretty much now too late to get a message like that. So going into Season 6, who knows what that season's even going to look like, because everyone will start off with the same performances, will end with Abu Dhabi, and then the only kind of differing factor will be over the winter. We know sometimes some AI teams and AI drivers themselves like to, you know, get boosted, or, you know, they're reducing pace due to their age or, you know, experience they've gained over the course of the previous season, and always patterns seem to change a little bit, quite subtly. But in terms of the field spread, things may be just as bonkersly close as it has been in the last couple of races, where we've had, you know, the likes of Aston Martin, Williams getting up there, getting in points, toppling big names like Red Bull, McLaren, simply because their drivers are doing an amazing job as well. And as has been the pattern for the last couple of episodes, we've got Mercedes, Ferrari and Haas up here in the top 10 alongside myself and Tsunoda, who does very well and promisingly well in Q1 there in P4. The 2 Porsche Williams looking pretty strong as well, just outside the top 10. So let's see if they can make it through into the top 10 shootout. For some disappointing results maybe lower down for the likes of Red Bull, with one of them I think already being knocked out, and one McLaren as well, as we're now in Q2 across the line for our second consecutive lap. That was because I found to find a bit more speed actually doing 2 laps in a row around Brazil, because there's still plenty of fuel in the tank, and it is going to be a pretty disastrous weekend for Red Bull as Albon finishes in P16 there. Just no pace from him. One Aston Martin makes it through, no Williams, so they'll be frustrated after their Q1 showing. But great stuff there for Lance Stroll to get into the top 10 off the back of a double points finish for them around Mexico. But it is all Haas versus Mercedes versus Ferrari versus ourselves. And I'm hoping Tsunoda can pull off his socks and show the pace he had in Q1 here for us today. Let's see, we're on our final flying lap. Our first lap only got us P6. Wasn't that quick. We've gained about 3 tenths nearly here on the second flyer. Purple in the first sector. green the second, and that's going to be enough to get us up onto the front row. But the man of the hour is Mick Schumacher. I thought it was a pretty damn good lap, and it was, but Schumacher just pulled out of the bag in nearly 2 tenths ahead of me, so he's deservedly P1 for tomorrow's sprint race, remember here, for Brazil. What happened to Verstappen, I don't know, down in P10, so clearly Schumacher taking some solace from that P2, and, he was leading a lot of the race in Mexico, so clearly not being, too distraught from me stealing the win on the last lap from him. And Verstappen, I don't know if he's got more car issues from Mexico to here. I don't know where that pace went for him. In terms of the championship, Drugovich in P6 and Leclerc P7, so we've got a good chance to actually extend our points lead, and if we stay 50 points ahead of second place in the championship today at the end of the episode, we could technically be crowned the champion today, but with a sprint race involved and rain, I think, also forecast for Sunday, you just never know what's going to happen. So, as always this season, as we've done very well, we're just going to really focus on maximising the result, and we'll just see where we end up in the standings by the end of it. As I said at the start of the episode, we had a lot of success in the JPS black and gold livery, but we also had one of our greatest victories potentially in this livery, remember, back at the Austrian Grand Prix with that insane tyre call in the wet. So hoping this livery can bring us some more luck and intelligence as it did in Austria as we go to 5 red lights to the sprint race on Saturday here in Brazil. We're underway. Schumacher off P1 gets a great start. We've had a lot of wheel spin, and that allows Russell to get up into P2. He blocks us into turn 1 by cutting across. Sebastian Vettel has had a good start in P4, tried to go around the outside of us, but we just had enough mid-apex speed to keep it in 3rd place. But Russell wasting no time at all, up to 2nd and already on the back of Schumacher to hustle and harry. And meanwhile, Drugovich just gets ahead of Valtteri Bottas, and there's 2 Repsol Haas cars almost trip over one another. Then you've got Vettel, who's fallen down now to P6 actually after all of that, followed by Leclerc in P7, much slower than his teammate. Once again, Russell is where Leclerc wants to probably be, as we now have yellow flags, virtual safety car. Liam Lawson out of this sprint early, and it's actually a full course safety car by the end of it then, and it's because of an incident here involving Lawson and a couple of other cars. And Lawson, unfortunately, has dealt with the heaviest blow of a tyre shed off there, but multiple cars with damage and front wings off there as they all concertina up on lap 1. And we're now getting ready to go for our even shorter sprint race as we get going on towards lap 4, weaving about, trying to get temperatures in. Schumacher bolts a bit earlier than I thought he would, and we get caught out a tiny bit. We're not fully on the back of George Russell, and the tyres are still not really fully up to temperature, I can feel, going to turn 1. Just a little bit of understeer on the exit of that subtle left hand on the exit of the Senna S, but it's still Schumacher P1. Russell is staying with him for us on the exit. Bit of oversteer as the tyres are still getting up to temperature, and that's going to invite Drugovich in to go round the outside. We try and battle him up. We're ahead up the hill, but Drugovich is still there and somehow pulls it alongside us and then gets the elbow out, scares us off the apex a little bit. He pretty much forced me into either having to correct my racing line there, or we were going to make some contact. I would have ended up with a bit of front wing damage, and to be honest, a lot of the theme of this season has been me keeping out of trouble. I don't think we've actually had a single kind of bad collision this season, whereas there were so many incidents and mistakes in previous seasons. I think that's been a big reason to our success, and also the consistency of, when we finished the race, one of you guys pointed out in a previous episode, we've not actually been outside the top 5, so I'm hoping we can keep that record alive, because I'm pretty proud of that actually, in what has been a very competitive season with maxed out cars. That's actually quite a mean feat, as we now defend successfully from Bottas and maintain P4, but Drugovich gets away from us. 3 wide behind. Verstappen tries to go and get Sebastian Vettel, but Leclerc tried to be a bit cheeky and get a double pass on the inside there, but he thought better of it. Verstappen up to P6, making up for that really poor qualifying. So clearly no problem with his car then. He's actually looking pretty quick. He just didn't get it together in Q3 maybe, as we now move all the way to lap 9. 3 laps to go of this sprint, and Russell's into P1. He's forced Schumacher into an error. Schumacher buckles under pressure, and Russell, just like in real life in 2022, Russell may be going on to get the sprint win today in this Season 5 Brazilian GP. As we now move through the laps, not much movement for me apart from catching up to Drugovich. Verstappen is going to try and go for a move on Bottas. Contact made on the front left. Bottas very stern with his defence, and the Ferrari just can't get past there, and that's going to be very frustrating for the Dutchman. More frustrating for Leclerc, still being stuck down in P8. Really not the sprint race he needed in terms of keeping the championship alive. Verstappen, though, going slow. Is it another failure? I think it is. It's an absolute calamity. Ferrari, they're so quick again. Finally in this series, it's been like 4 seasons since they've had the pace to challenge for podiums, for maybe wins, but it's just been that. It's been maybe wins. They've still not won a race this season, and their star man Verstappen suffers what I think is his 5th DNF, I want to say, of the whole season. It's just not good enough for the Scuderia. They've got the speed. Next season, they're going to have to come back and sort out the reliability if they want to actually now challenge for a championship once again. They haven't done so really since Season 1 of this entire career mode, as we move back to our POV, and we're right up, pretty much pushing Drugovich through these corners as we finally caught up to it. It's taken us the whole sprint though on these medium tyres, and we just can't do it. We just didn't have enough pace in Sector 2. For all that there's a lot of action at Sao Paulo in real life and the game, but at times it can be very tricky to overtake when you're equalised on pace, and that was the case today with Felipe Drugovich and myself. Just couldn't manage to get past him with the same compound tyre, same fuel levels, just couldn't manage it. So we get P4. It's not too bad though. We gain points on Leclerc, who is our nearest man in the championship. Drugovich does gain a little bit on us, but it's really a drop in the ocean in terms of the gap we've got to everyone. And so now our gap is 59 points in the Drivers' Championship. 2 points, though, behind Mercedes because of Russell's P1 in today's sprint. And with Tsunoda down the order, that's going to be a bit frustrating. So although we've got one hand on the Drivers' Championship, very much not the case in the Constructors. So we still need to push flat out to have a go at Merck. It's now time for the full-fat Sunday Grand Prix, with the sprint results, of course, making the starting grid, obviously with some penalties maybe for others, though, to come into play. Let's find out. Let's go to the grid sequence and go to Sunday's race.
Formula One returns to Interlagos once again, with the stage set for what promises to be another classic Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel famously clinched his 3rd championship here in 2012, and just 4 years later, Max Verstappen treated us to one of the finest wet weather drives of all time. It's an unusual anti-clockwise race here at Interlagos, where the Sao Paulo locals are packed into the grandstands at each of the 15 corners around this classic 2.7-mile circuit. 2 very fast sections bookend the famous and highly technical Sector 2, where getting a good run out of Junsao into one of the 2 DRS zones will be key to any overtaking prospects today. Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. Mick Schumacher lines up on pole position, and Felipe Drugovich completes the front row. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have the owner driver, Bottas, Charles Leclerc and Hülkenberg, Stroll, Vettel, Magnussen and Pierre Gasly, Russell, Perez, Alex Albon and Sainz, Norris, Ricciardo, Fernando Alonso and Oscar Piastri, Ocon, Tsunoda, Liam Lawson and Max Verstappen completes the grid. Now it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track. Anthony Davidson joins me once again in the commentary box, and it's fantastic to have you with us here, but I'm curious, as a man with experience out on the track, How do you stop those pre-race nerves from becoming overwhelming when you're lining up on the grid?
Well, I imagine they'll be starting to feel the adrenaline as they anticipate the rundown into turn 1, a bit like preparing to go into battle. The unknown situation will bring nerves, but that's a good thing. It will keep them focused on the moment and on their surroundings as we build towards the start of the Grand Prix.
So we've actually got some massive penalties in this race then. Russell, who would have been on pole position for this race, is now towards the back of the grid because he's had a massive engine penalty. So no wonder he was so quick in the sprint. He must have a brand new engine. And Verstappen, after that failure, is at the back, also taking more components to, well, just survive the rest of the weekend, I guess. So it elevates us up onto third place. Schumacher is on pole again for another race here in Brazil, this time the full Grand Prix. Drugovich second. We're on the soft tyres along with Schumacher. Hulkenberg's been disqualified. Norris is already on the starting grid. What has gone on there? So something's happened on the formation lap. Even Bottas was ahead of me on the formation lap. So a couple of people have maybe been out of place and been disqualified from the formation lap. I don't think it should affect the race. We now know, it doesn't really matter too much. We've had our fair share of glitches before at Sao Paulo, pre the 5 red lights. And then we've got 1, 2, disqualified 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, apparently 20 cars. Yep, there's clearly something in the air and in the coding here at Sao Paulo in F1 22 My Team Career Mode, but we're pushing that aside and concentrating on our race from P3 now on the grid to 5 red lights to the Brazilian Grand Prix, and we are underway in a potential race that we could be crowned the Drivers' World Champion by the end of it. It's a good start for us. On the outside to the inside of Felipe Drugovich up into P2. It's the perfect start that we wanted to get ahead of all the medium tyre runners. And now we have a free opportunity to chase after Mick Schumacher, both of us on the softs, along with a couple of others, Nico Hulkenberg being one of them, in a high-flying Aston Martin. And because of all the penalties, we've got a very odd top 10. Hulkenberg in the Aston Martin. You've got Stroll there, Magnussen, Perez in the Renault in P9, Gasly in P10 in the McLaren ahead of both Audi cars. And oh, there's a crash! There's a crash behind! And it's it's Max Verstappen! Max Verstappen is out of the Brazilian Grand Prix! He DNF'd in the sprint from an engine failure, and now he's crashed out the main Grand Prix, and our teammate Tsunoda has been caught up in it, unfortunately, and now that's called out a full course safety car again on lap 1 of a race here in Brazil. Absolutely bonkers start. I can't believe it. Verstappen from last place on the grid. This man, he's moved to Ferrari and he's carried all the bad luck he had at Renault and at Red Bull before, I guess, with him basically, and is added to the Ferrari bad luck they have anyway for being Ferrari. He's had a cracking start. He's on the softs as well, so clearly looking to make moves, which he's done, overtaking 3 cars, maybe 4 here as he goes down the inside of Tsunoda, who he himself actually had a grid penalty. I didn't actually note that, but our teammate had a grid penalty as well. So we're on the back foot in terms of the Mercedes constructors fight for sure this episode, but he has the same fate as Liam Lawson before him. The front left gets sheared off. It's just unfortunate Tsunoda and a couple other cars get caught up with him, and Tsunoda breaks his front wing. So it really is just going to be all about myself versus Leclerc and Russell, who is outside the top 10 right now. But we need to try and outscore both Mercedes today to try and get back in the constructors fight. So right at this moment in time, it's all about the restart, and we've nailed it to try and overtake Schumacher, but we've actually just overtaken him before we cross the start-finish line, so we get told to give back the position. That's a bit unfortunate. A millisecond later on the throttle, and I think I would have actually got that P1 fair and square into turn 1, but no fret, we're going to continue and go again. Both of us on the soft, so much better pace at the moment versus Drugovich and Leclerc on the mediums, and such is the pace of the softs that Hulkenberg is keeping up with the top 4 here as we overtake Schumacher and actually make relatively easy work of it. He does fight us a bit, but ultimately, I've just got the confidence to keep the car placed where I want it to on the inside, and we're eventually just going to get back onto the racing line. But Schumacher isn't going to give up. On lap 8 then, a couple of laps later, he reconvenes and he's recomposed now, and he's coming for us with DRS and Drugovich now, out of nowhere. It's 3 wide into turn 1, and Felipe Drugovich, where has he come from? A kamikaze dive from the home favourite, remember? The Brazilian, he's up in P1. He came from so far back. I really didn't feel like he was anywhere near myself or Mick Schumacher, but he's gone and sent it down the inside. I was too busy looking at Mick, and he's just thought, okay, I'll see a space, I'll go for it. And he's got into P1 momentarily. We did get him back, of course, as he saw there in the same place we got Schumacher. And now we are defending Drugovich because Schumacher has come in off those soft tyres. But I think that's a bit early, so I think he is facing a bit more tyre wear than I am, because I reckon we can take these softs a little bit longer. And because, remember, I said there was some rain maybe to come, it's still forecast for later in this race. So the longer I can go on softs, the better, because then I can go on to mediums and then hopefully straight onto a set of intermediates if we need to, if the rain does indeed come. But right now, lap 11, unfortunately, Drugovich may just have a bit too much pace, as now those mediums will be the better tyre compared to the softs. I mean, I've still got some pretty okay pace, but the mediums just have a bit more traction to allow Drugovich to get ahead. We've got yellow flags because Alexander Albon is out of this Grand Prix. You saw the infographic the lap before. We cross him at turns 2 as he's parked up, and we're in P2 now, looking to try and swap back for P1. We go to left, go to the right. Drugovich really firm with his defence. He's placing his car perfectly, but now we've learnt from the last lap, we're going to go to the outside of this corner, pinch Drugovich in the same way he did to us, and that allows us to get back into P1. But lap 13, now's where I call it a day, because you can see my tyre icon is orange, so now's the time to come in, because to be fair, also on my wheel, I was feeling the tyre wear, because the understeer was kicking in. There just wasn't that much biting on these softs. So we took those soft tyres 13 laps. I think that's very, very solid. You know, the lap before, Hulkenberg came in, so Hulkenberg took those tyres 12 laps. So I think we both done very well, actually, myself and Hulkenberg, and much better than Schumacher, who had to go a bit earlier onto his first pit stop. And I actually wonder if he's maybe gone to the hard tyres instead of the mediums, because I've definitely gone mediums, because I think we can do an aggressive strategy and hopefully hold out for the rain on these mediums, as Hulkenberg just gets past us with an undercut. So we've got to go and race and overtake Nico Hulkenberg. We haven't really raced him too much this season on his return to Formula 1, but in a much improved Aston Martin, he actually may put up a bit of a fight, you know, because the Aston does look pretty damn handy around here. But what's happened to Schumacher? He's 5.7 seconds behind us. He's behind Lance Stroll on a set of hard tyres. So either the hards were just that horrendous, or he's made some sort of error, or even Lance Stroll just held him up for that long. I don't know what's happened, but Schumacher's race has unravelled, and therefore Ferrari's entire race has unravelled, because Verstappen's already out of it, of course, as we now overtake the German, who's hulking back this season, but he's actually going to come back, ironically, down the inside of us to try and re-overtake us. But like I said, the Aston is pretty handy, and even though we get the move, he's actually got DRS now on this straight, and even with deploying all the battery in the world, Hulkenberg comes back down our inside. The Aston Martin is giving us a real good fight, actually. Fair play to him. Fair play, you know, it's good to see, you know, Aston, after 5 long seasons, they actually look somewhat competitive now as we go on 2 laps later into this stint and the race. And finally, the medium tyre runners who started the race on that compound have come in. Leclerc comes out just behind us, very close actually, but we take P4. Drugovich and Vettel, Tsunoda yet to come in, so we'll see where Drugovich slots into this, but we could have a chance to actually undercut him and get into P1 once he makes his stop. We'll see on lap 19. Leclerc is coming knocking though, so as Drugovich exits the pit lane, he is behind us, but Leclerc is going for a move now on the inside. Surely we have the traction on the mediums to outdo him, you think so, but you saw there the Mercedes car just picks up so much acceleration, and Leclerc makes it very awkward for me up the hill. We actually make a bit of contact there, but clever defensive driving from Leclerc just to make that as awkward as possible. So it's Leclerc from myself, Hulkenberg P3, the two Haas cars, Magnussen in the Golf Porsche Williams ahead of Sainz, Vettel, and then Russell having a real old scrap with Lance Stroll in P10, and there's a train behind Stroll. I suspect in the same way Schumacher fell away, I think Stroll is a bit slow in this race, maybe a car issue, and he's holding up a lot of people in this race. Speaking of Schumacher, though, he's down in P20. What's happened to him? He can't be that outright slow, so there must have been an incident. We're looking at a replay here of Schumacher to turn one. Oh, that's silly. That's silly. Mick Schumacher, what are you doing? What are you doing? He just crashed into Stroll, and it's an extra pit stop. So Ferrari are once again completely out of the race, having been the quickest car over one lap. As we now go for the race lead versus Leclerc. This is fantastic. P1 and P2 in the Drivers' Championship battling it out around Sao Paulo in the third last round. We get down the inside. This time Leclerc makes an error because he goes way too wide there. We kept it tight on the apex, and we're up into P1, but for how long? Lap 24 as the sun comes down and the rain clouds come out here in Brazil. Leclerc is trying his hardest to get P1 back. He's kept it side by side through the entirety of the CNRS. He's got the momentum and the advantage, but we've now got DRS actually, because we were behind. We're saving battery for the run down out of this corner, deploying on the exit to stay side by side. Leclerc gives us no room to work with, and we made contact with him. We nearly went into the wall. He turned into us. He gave us no room. He gave us no room. All the time, you have to leave her the space. What are you doing, man? We saved up our battery on purpose because I knew he was going to be quite good down this stretch. And we were alongside. We were literally wheel to wheel. And he just gave us no room. Like, I fully think we were alongside him enough to warrant him giving us room there. He's just taken the corner as if we weren't there. You know, if that was me on the outside, as I've literally done before in this very race, you take a wider line and keep right. You don't turn towards that curb on the left. And he has done, and he's made contact with us because we kind of bounced from the curb to his car back to the curb. We actually did quite well to lock the axles to stop us spinning straight into the yellow wall and be out this Grand Prix. But now we've got some major yellow front wing damage. I asked for a weather report because I want to know when the rain's coming, because if it's going to be imminently, there's no point pitting now for damage and for new dry tyres. I may as well just take the pain of understeer into every right-hander with this broken wing and then try and pit earlier than most for intermediates. And that's the only way to kind of maybe keep on going and be in the points this race. I think we'll definitely still be able to finish in the points this race, but will our top 5 record be over this season? Lap 25, Stroll's got an engine failure, and that might just give us a safety car, and that chance made me go into the pits. I don't know if there's for certain going to be one, but I can see some droplets of rain, so that was enough boxes ticked for me to go, let's throw the dice, because there's rain, it's falling, so we'll get wet enough eventually. Let's go to Inters, let's take the damage. There is no safety car, unfortunately, because of Stroll's DNF there. But nonetheless, we've taken the gamble now to go on to Inters, and I just got to hope it gets wet enough soon enough for me not to lose too much time in all of this. We were, I think it was P8 before when we, as we came in, so let's see where we end up by the time everyone else comes on to Inters. It is pretty dry still, but the rain is falling. You can see it's staying on the screen. It's on the top of the chassis as well. So it is on the way. So it's not like this is a complete gamble, but it's just, again, kind of like we did in Austria. We've just gone a bit earlier onto the Inters. What is it with this livery and going earlier onto Inters when it's not fully wet yet? But lap 28 then, we've caught up to Schumacher. He's really struggling. He's coming in for what I assume is intermediate. My engineer's asking about soft tyres. Don't know what the hell he's smoking, but we'll ignore him and go on into turn 1. Lap 29, lots of people in the pits. Sainz, Bottas ahead of me, Russell behind, all on Inters, Tsunoda on Inters. So now it is time, and we're in P10, but there's still some cars out there that are yet to pit. So I think actually we will still end up being in P8 by the time those guys make their pit stop. So in all of that, considering the orange to yellow damage we had on the front wing, it's actually not that bad that we've stayed in P8 then with that earlier intermediate pit stop. And look at the chaos going on here as Liam Lawson is caught out on the dry tyres and creates an absolute traffic jam ahead of him and behind him. And it means that now Magnussen and Hulkenberg are side by side. Golf Porsche Williams versus Aston Martin. And this is for P3 in the race somehow, because Leclerc is leading this race in controversial circumstances, I want to point out. Drugovich second, but yeah, Kevin Magnussen and the Golf Porsche Williams is in third. Hulkenberg in a legitimate P4 for Aston Martin. Then it's Sainz, Bottas, myself up into P7. So we've actually gained one position in this whole round of pit stop. So not too bad. And you know what? I still think our top 5 record is still on. We've got 2 places to go and we'll keep it up of being in the top 5 at the end of every single Grand Prix that we've managed to finish. As we go down the inside of Bottas, he was a bit over aggressive with me as we banged tyres for some reason, but we're up into P6 and now there's only 1 position to go to get that top 5. I'm going to try as well if I can to maybe go after Hulkenberg, who's only just up the road, and try and spoil his and Aston Martin's party, sorry to say. But we're looking for a move on Sainz, but Sainz runs into the back of Hulkenberg. What is going on? The wet condition, I mean, it's getting wetter and wetter actually quite rapidly here. So if this race was going on any longer, we would probably be going to full wet, I would say, in terms of the feeling in the steering wheel for me. The force feedback was making the wheel so heavy to turn, which generally means I think it's time for the full wets because the tread on the inters isn't clearing the standing water enough. But Sainz slow with front wing damage, so he gifts us P5. Unfortunately, because of that crossover, it is now time for full wets technically on the last lap. And because of that, we know how overpowered the AI are. Hulkenberg and Magnussen both pulling away from me, in fact, in these conditions. You know, this was the reason why I pit onto full wet in Austria, remember, because in these conditions when you're on the wrong tyre in the wet, the AI are just unreal. But Leclerc wins the Brazilian Grand Prix with a bit of, well, I would say a bit of controversy surrounding his race win. Drugovich second place, so my 2 nearest people in the championship get a 1-2, and we finish behind in P5. We continue the top 5 record, but I'm not happy. I'm not happy.
Another superb Sao Paulo Grand Prix comes to an end then, and it's a thoroughly deserved victory. Tell me, Ant, how do they manage to achieve this win?
Rain always has the potential to liven up a race and mix up the order, and they've taken full advantage of that to claim the victory today. It's always a bit of a lottery when the conditions are like this, but they've managed to stay on circuit and have come out on top.
After an excellent performance at the Grand Prix, I'm sure there'll be plenty of celebrations tonight amongst the Mercedes team, and they certainly deserve it.
So the man who's second place in the championship keeps the championship alive, going to the next round at Saudi Arabia in Jeddah by, well, squeezing me out and winning the race. Now, I already know the comments are blaming me somehow for that, but I truly believe this time I was in the right. I was fully alongside him. I was literally tyre wall to tyre wall with his front left to my front right, and he still squeezed me towards the curb. Yeah, so, I mean, it goes to Jeddah. In terms of the points we got today, we still did very well to recover for 10 points in that race. And I'm happy we kept our top 5 finishing record alive in that one, because that could have easily been ruined this episode. So it means going towards Saudi Arabia, the second last race, 45 points ahead of Leclerc. So that pretty much means that I've now very much got one hand on the championship, because the only way Leclerc can keep the title alive going to the final race is if that gap comes down to 25 points. That's all we have to have, more than 25 at the end of Jeddah to be crowned the Drivers' World Championship. to be crowned the Drivers' World Champion one race early. But, of course, the Constructors' fight is still on. We're 14 points behind Mercedes now because Tsunoda scored 0 today. Obviously, Leclerc got a win. I did recover, but Russell also got some points from that sprint race, of course, as well. So, we still got work to do. So, you know, Drivers' Championship aside, next episode, which will be a very nice moment, and I'm going to enjoy that very much so. We've got another reason, actually, to try and win the championship in style with maybe a win at Jeddah, because we still need to work on points for the Constructors' Championship, because that's in the balance. Mercedes actually have the advantage in the last 2 rounds here, because they've got 2 drivers consistently in there. Tsunoda, you can't really rely on him. Some races he's really great, he gets a good amount of points, like Mexico. Some races like today, he didn't show up. So yeah, it's still work to do. We want to try and get 3 back-to-back Constructors Championships in a row. But in terms of the Drivers' Championship, that elusive first championship, well, next episode, I think we have a very, very good chance of finally securing that. So, till then, that's going to be a real fun moment after 85 episodes of hopefully sealing our first Drivers' Championship. But till then, if you have enjoyed this episode, hit that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.